Well, you know what time it is. We got the game out of the way. We took an L. Now let's watch this film and get to the PFF grades with John Kosko. First segment, we'll get into the defense. They got a lot of stuff to get into. They got Deion Jones. We'll talk to John about that acquisition and see what he brings to the table for the Cleveland Browns defense. Then we'll talk a little bit about the offense. Offense is trending in the right way. However, there are some areas they can get a little better. We'll talk about that. And then finally, we'll get to 2 or 3 things that Browns could really work on overall to get this ship righted and get back into the winning phase of things against the New England Patriots. We'll do that all coming up on the next episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, your hosts, Jeff Lloyd at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Of course, the Barbershop 92.3 The Fan, pregame, postgame coverage for, let's see, Browns, Buckeyes, Guardians, whatever. If you got an extra voice box laying around, lend it to our boy G. Bush for this week. My man gonna be tired.
Yeah, I got to look. John Costello ain't got a voice either. He on about 75 podcasts too. How many podcasts you got, dog? 76 of them.
I do guest on quite a few, but I also coach my boys in flag football on 2 different teams, and then I also coach high school football. So I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit, which is weird.
Yeah, those weekends will do it to you. Today's episode of Locked On Browns is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Guys, as everybody knows, Locked On Browns, we appreciate all the support, whether it is on your favorite podcast platform or, of course, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, notifications on. So as soon as content drops, you guys are there to digest it. And, of course, now the Roku app. Locked On Cleveland Sports. You can find the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. You can find Locked On Browns, Locked On Guardians, Locked On Cavs. Check it all out. As always, appreciate everybody for the support on those fronts. John, we got to get into this defense here. And this is the part that I think is mind-boggling, because I think if we all go back to everything we talked about from the spring into the summer to finally getting the finality of what it was going to be for Deshaun Watson. The one thing that we thought was going to be is, can this offense do enough to score? Because we think the defense is going to be able to do the job for at least the first 4 weeks, for at least maybe the first 5 weeks. There's going to be a week or two maybe where you blow a tire. But here we are again, and now it's 2 weeks in a row. And, I mean, when you get pushed around for over 450 yards on the ground 2 weeks in a row in the NFL, that's like your will, man. You're being manned over. You're just basically being – exasperated. Is it the players themselves in Jacob Phillips or Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah? Is it the defensive tackles that are getting pushed so far off the ball? Technically, you really don't have the correct angle as a linebacker or a safety to come up and run pursue, because that stuff's supposed to be 3-4 yards north of you, and you either go into the scrum where the ball is or you jet to the outside and chase after the ball carrier. John, what exactly is the issue? Because I tell you, obviously, G and I talked about this morning. They went down to Atlanta, and I'm sure there was some conversation. Oh, hey, Deion Jones might be available. And I'm sure Andrew Berry and Nebraska talked about this all week and said, you want to know what? Sunday will be the determining factor. Well, while everybody was doing press conferences, Andrew Berry said, hell with that. I'm going to get a veteran linebacker.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, right? So, obviously, the defensive line is not good. You're talking Tommy Togiai with a 28.9 grade for the season.
Season.
Jordan Elliott, 30.2. And then Jacob Phillips, 36.0. So you're and Perrion Winfrey, 47.9. He's a rookie. You're not really expecting a 4th-round rookie to being able to come in there and
so those 4 numbers even add up to 100?
No.
It's bad. It's up. They don't, and it's bad. And that's essentially the middle of the defense. And when the middle of the defense is that bad, and as you talk about going from Anthony Walker, who is grading at an 82.7 to a Jacob Phillips at that 36, that's a massive drop off. That's significant. That's when you talk about playing defensive football, it's eliminating the weak links on your defense so that the offense can't just, hey, pick apart and just pick on that. Right now, the Browns have a lot of weak links on their defense, and their secondary is generally very good. I would say that, Denzel Ward's not having a good year. Part of that, I think, is he's gotten hurt. There's been busts in coverage that he's been a part of, and that type of stuff. But the thing is that when you have a weak link on defense, offenses know it and they pick it. And if you have multiple, it makes it so that you're a porous defense. Right now, they're the second worst run defense in the NFL. It's interesting to say that too, because of how bad it's been for the Browns. But the Detroit Lions have been just a little bit worse from an efficiency standpoint of allowing big runs against opponents. So it's partly, part of that is scheme. You can help out your weaknesses there, but essentially it is on the players.
John, to me, I'm looking at it I'm watching this, and Jake Burns just put out a clip, and it's just Perion Winfrey's just getting driven 5 yards into a linebacker, 7 yards deep. I mean, I haven't seen defensive linemen get pancaked in a long time. I didn't think pancakes existed anymore. I was like, nah, ain't nobody nasty like that no more.
Do you watch Wyatt Teller?
Yeah, well, besides him, he puts everybody on a milk box. What happened to him? What happened to that boy? Wyatt Teller was pulling. That's what happened. Let me give you this. I not only the guys that are John Johnson in the secondary is terrible in the run game too. They miss a bunch of tackles. I don't understand the tackling, and the thing that's getting me, gap integrity. When you're looking at this film, it's hard for me to tell what gap these guys are supposed to have, because they're getting driven and washed out of the gaps in the run fits like I've never seen before. And that's a hyperbole, but I have not seen this in the NFL like this.
Yeah, it's bad. And I think we all knew that it was an issue going into the season. We've seen it. We saw it year one under Stefanski and Joe Woods, their defense at when the Raiders came into town, they kind of pushed them around. It was an embarrassing look, but it wasn't like an overwhelming issue, I don't think. And I think the reason why is because the secondary was also weak that year, and then so they went out and fixed the secondary. The secondary was obviously a top 5 unit last year after they gelled, and it took a few weeks to do that. But then you kind of saw more of the issues that were popping up on the interior defensive line. They did have some veterans in there that could hold down, though, and that would help that. Now, they don't have any veterans on that defensive line except for Taven Bryan, who's never shown anything in the NFL to be a guy that you would say, hey, that's a veteran guy that we want to put in there on the interior defensive line. So everybody knew that it was an issue. They were hoping that these guys would develop. They haven't yet. And it's because, maybe it's a coaching issue that they don't know how to develop defensive interior talent. Because it's not as if they were bad prospects, I'd say, coming out. And, a lot of guys that are drafted in the mid rounds don't pan out, but not a single one of these guys have panned out for them. So it's bad, and it's obviously something that they need to address. I think, my dad would tell me all the time, he's like, are they going to sign in Ndamukong Suh? It's like, probably not, because they just don't value the position, and they need to figure it out, because it's obviously an issue.
It's a big issue. It's an absolutely large issue here. Locked On Browns. We sit down for our PFF Under the Lens. Jeff, Lloyd, Garrett, Bush, John Kosko. We're going to go in the next segment here. John gave us a quick, brief scouting report on new linebacker Deion Jones. We got some thoughts here from the Browns offense yesterday against yesterday in the loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. Fall is chaos in your pants. You're overheating 1 second and freezing the next. To be ready for anything, you need underwear that can handle everything. It's time for Tommy John underwear. In Tommy John underwear, you are that much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. Name a problem with other underwear, and Tommy John's solved it. Tommy John's breathable, lightweight fabric has 4 times the stretch of competing brands. They come with a no wedgie guarantee. thanks to a non-rolling waistband and legs that never ride up. Plus, they feature a horizontal quick draw fly. Hammock pouch supports the awkward swing and slap, getting everyone something to be grateful for. With our 17 million pairs sold, people love Tommy John underwear. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. Look, this time of year, stuff rides up. You always need your JUNK in place. Plus, everything's packed with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or its free guarantee. Go to TommyJohn.com/lockedon right now for 20% off your first order. 20% off at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See the site for details.
Welcome back.
I didn't mention, guys, we have a new sponsor.
Go ahead. Oh, we do have a new sponsor? Listen, maybe I could bring them over to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I need some of them sponsors. Y'all got like 1,000 of them. These boys over Locked On. Well, I guess I am part of Locked On. I'll take it. I almost gave out the telephone number. 2165. Never mind. We talking to John Kosko. On the Locked On Browns podcast, we talk about our linebackers are terrible. Yes, we can't cover a cold, and yes, we can't tackle anybody. So let's go get some help. You get Deion Jones. Maybe I don't know what he has still left in the tank. I know he has a shoulder injury. He's been able to be athletic. Once upon a time, he was a Pro Bowler. What does Deion Jones bring to the team? What is the PFF grades, and what is he about? Can he help the defense?
Well, if he's healthy, he can be one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL. In his first 5 seasons in the NFL, he didn't have a coverage grade below 70.6. But then last year in 2021, he was a 33.6. And his numbers were like drastically lower last year compared to his previous years. I have to assume when you see something like that, he had an injury. Without even looking at the injury report, you don't get like a guy who sits here at this level and then all of a sudden it just drops off a cliff. I assume that he had an injury last year. So his strong suit is coverage. He's been very good at that. He's had 2 seasons above 82. And then on 2017, he was a 91.7. He was a top graded linebacker that year. So what you're not getting though from him is elite level run defense. He's not going to bring that to the table. But the thing is, like, neither was Anthony Walker. Well, Anthony Walker was a veteran leadership predecessor that was on that defense that could get the team in probably the right positions and make sure everybody was on the same page for the most part. Because I think that is what is important when it comes to defense is, like, if you're not lined up, you don't know what the play call is, you could look really bad every single time that you're going to be there. He might have been a guy who was a corrector, though he was still not very, productive in terms of like making stops, being good in coverage. So I think Walker, though, provided that. Deion Jones can provide that same thing. It depends on how he's going to mesh with this locker room and how quickly he can assimilate to this defense, because they obviously need somebody better than Jacob Phillips out there who he just isn't it right now. He can't lock it down at that Mike backer position. So he should be able to provide elite level coverage at the linebacker position, and that is going to be very important, I'd say.
This kind of reminds me, John, a little bit of the guy who was here the last 2 years. And there were times where there were injuries. He played a ton. And then there were times we would question why he didn't play. And that was Malcolm Smith. So I think Deion Jones is a little bit more player like that. A guy who's still got some athleticism to him. Always been a little bit of a smaller linebacker. So, yeah, there are going to be times it runs where he might get taken for a ride. But I think, as you said, the key here is, obviously, as this team's coming off the field, I think what they're saying is the communication that's coming from these linebackers is not making a difference. It's not making a difference because it doesn't seem like anybody's on page anyway. And then when you start to get the ball rammed down your throat, you just try to guess, or you're over aggressive to try to make a play in the backfield to warn for the fact that you're just getting dragged everywhere. So, but John, with that, look, the offense, and this is what we're talking about today. Look, right now between Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, you've got 3 individual players here on pace for 4,000 total yards. Is it sustainable? Maybe not Nick. It's certainly possible the other 2 could, because the Browns are going to have to throw the ball a lot here. But this unit as a whole here, John, because I just keep pounding my head into the table, because I just can't sit here and believe that this team is scoring the way they are and having such a difficult time in these games due to the defense. Because I think overall, if we look at everything the offense has done to this point, I think we all would have signed up for this in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and it's obviously they're being efficient with down to down, drive to drive efficiency for the most part. There are specific instances where things fall apart. Obviously, game-ending situations. This past weekend was a big example of that, where you got to the 35-yard line and then basically kind of mailed it in, and you still had about a minute left to go. You don't call a run play on first down. That obviously bleeds a lot of the clock, and then
they were not ready for that drive. They were not ready for that opportunity whatsoever.
Well, so they got to that. They got the first down off that second down, right? So you're now into field goal range, but you still you can't be settling for 50-yard field goals. If anything right there, you still don't know what to do in that situation, clock the ball. The worst thing you can do is call a run play like that. That's going to bleed clock. You want time is what you're valuable is there. And if you can get, hey, let's get in the right pass play right now. Instead of going, oh, we just ran a run play. Now we've burned 20 seconds off the clock. We now have to hurry up and then call some sort of play here. I'm going to take a deep shot. And that ruins it. Now you're on third down and you're in a situation where it's like, okay, we got to throw it to the sideline, make a quick hitter, and hopefully we get it. And if we don't, then, we'll have a 54-yard field goal. It's like that's a situation there where the sequence of plays didn't add up. And that's where, like, I tweeted out, and I've gotten a lot of hate from people that Stefanski is actively losing games with his play calling. That's what I mean in that situation. That situation right there, you need to be a lot better, and you need to be on your A game when you're calling plays in that situation. Same thing kind of happened down in the red zone inside the 5, their first drive for the Browns against the Falcons last week. They needed to call better plays. The same thing happened in the end game situation against the Falcons. Same thing against the, in week, and what was it? The Jets game, the second week, where they play calling kind of left them down, and also obviously execution is an issue there too. Obviously, Jacoby Brissett can't be throwing interceptions in end game situations. All of that is combined, right? But like, as a play caller, head coach, you've got to be better in that situation. 98% of the other time, he's been great. I think you talk about, like, obviously Nick Chubb is having a phenomenal season. He's, on pace. He's like, trucking to go towards that 2,000-yard mark. He might probably not going to get there, but he's definitely on pace for 1,500. And I think it's just, you got to be, obviously it's hard to be perfect every single time. Especially you have a backup quarterback, you have to kind of be perfect in that situation.
Let me ask you this, John. In that situation where he's on the goal line, and this is the play where Jacoby Brissett throws the interception, I know that we seem counterproductive, and these guys are adults and they're grown, and Jacoby Brissett is a veteran, and he should know that. But wouldn't it be advantageous to say, hey, look, just explaining the situation. Hey, we're down here. We got 3, Jacoby. If it ain't there, throw it in Lake Erie. Like, just reminding them of the down distance, what it needs to be, because I don't think there's too many times where these things happen in the fourth quarter where I don't think people are gathering people and saying, hey, this is the circumstances, understand it, so it's front of mind. I can't throw that.
Yeah, I don't know if he says it to him in those moments or not. You'd hope that they kind of do, or they at least talk about it beforehand. And Jacoby Brissett needs to know that as well. Like, in that moment, like, I think everybody and their mom said, run for it.
Yes.
Like, it was wide open. Everybody saw it. Everybody knew it. He runs for it. He's at least getting the first down, if not the touchdown. The receiver's already blocking for him. And if you don't even get the first down, you still have a chance to either go for it on fourth down if you wanted to, or kick the field goal and take the lead in that situation. So that's for me is 100% Jacoby Brissett. Like, I'm not blaming Stefanski for that boneheaded of a play. That's about as bad as it gets when it comes to a quarterback. Yes. Like, you've played quarterback the position for your whole life. You should be a lot better in that type of moment. It's essentially what it is for him.
I put a tweet out today with that picture, the still of it. And, one of the nice responses I've got was Jacoby is now the host of Locked On Amari Cooper. So, which turned into the intercept. Yeah, right. Look, for whoever it was, take your credit, take your bow, because that was a quality Sometimes
Yeah,
I got to be honest. On a day like today, I do not look at many responses. Though I came across that one, and I was like, all right, that's good. Now that was good. That was
I like
really
that
good.
one.
Jeff Lloyd, John Kosko, PFF. Browns got some work to do. Got some taker to do. Got to take this sucker in the garage, see what they can do. Kosko is going to offer us up some ideas here on what they can do to hopefully right the ship. And, if anybody thought this week was tough against the Chargers, do you remember what happened last year when they faced the Patriots? Because not only did you lose a ball game, you got your butts beat in, and it basically derailed the rest of the season because that is when all the disharmony came to the surface. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. Fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the MLB. We're not talking about that. MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Welcome back
your Mets
to
lost, didn't they?
Yeah,
welcome
back. Welcome back to the Locked On Mets podcast. What happened? No, I'm playing. The Padres happened. Them boys was hitting them bombs. These guys, boy, they got a lineup. They paid for it. They payrolls $97 billion, but they got what they paid for the wild card. So, but you can join the bandwagon. Go ahead and get on with these Guardians. Get on with the Guardians. John, yeah, I like how you brought that up. There is some things the offense can work on. Situational football in the fourth quarter, they are lacking. They do sometimes. There's a lack for all of the yards that Nick Chubb is going to get, or it looks like he's going to hit. It still seems like he's on some of the imaginary pitch count. I mean, this dude had 9 carries for like 120 in the first half, and then he just didn't see it. Sometimes the game dictates that, but what are some areas you think that the Browns can work on in order to kind of, finish this thing in the fourth quarter, especially on the defensive end of the football?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's most of it is defense, right? Like, I know that they scored on 14 points on the first 2 drives, and then over the next 8 drives, only scored twice. You're not gonna score on every single drive you have the ball, but I think obviously, you can't miss your kicks, which Cade York has to get that figured out. And then you have to be able to not get yourself behind the chains from an offensive play calling standpoint. But like you're talking about this coming weekend against the Patriots, and you alluded to it, how they got their basically their what's kicked last year, and it just was a spiral that started everything. I mean, what Bill Belichick does is stop what you're good at. The Browns are obviously good at running the football, and if you look at last year, I mean, Nick Chubb didn't really have all that much success on the ground. Their average EPA per play was one of the worst of the season that the Browns had. And while on the other hand, the Patriots knew exactly how to defeat the Browns, which is ram it down their throats. And then Mac Jones also had a phenomenal game. So it was a masterclass from a coach that knows exactly what to do to take away your strengths and force you into situations that you're not good at. So now it'll be interesting to see how Kevin Stefanski can counter that, because I'm going to assume in this game that the Browns running game is not going to be very effective. And Jacoby Brissett's going to have to be good through the air initially to get the running game going. So if he can be effective early in the game on early down throws to get the Patriots on their heels, it'll open up those lanes for the Browns. And if you remember in this past game, yeah, the running game was there for the Browns in the first quarter, but then it kind of went away. And it wasn't because they weren't trying to run the ball, is the Chargers were actively trying to stop that. And it wasn't until, late in the second quarter, and also the third quarter when Jacoby Brissett was starting to deal, that it opened up the running game for the Browns. So, that's essentially, for me, Jacoby Brissett has to be on this game. And they're gonna stop the running game, and they're gonna take away Amari Cooper. And if you can find, obviously, Njoku, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then maybe start getting David Bell involved, because he's a reliable receiver, that can help in this situation. But from a defensive standpoint, you've got to figure out how to stop the run. I mean, you have to, because that's what New England does well, is just attack what you're bad at, and they're going to be doing it all game long.
Well, anytime Mac Jones can get a reference from John Kosko, John Kosko was not going to help himself, folks. That was going to happen. With Mac Jones most likely out, and this is where it's crazy for New England right now, John, because most likely Mac Jones will not play next week. It'll be Zappe one more time as their third quarterback. This team still ran 176 yards yesterday, 5 yards a pop, with a rookie quarterback, and basically everybody know they wanted to commit to the run. Now, this is a team who can run the football coming into this game, as to a team we just played who couldn't. And now all of a sudden they look like Oklahoma under the Switzer regime as far as running the ball, the Chargers. Now you have a team that can. What are the realistic chances you can kind of turn this around, A? Or B, do you try something different? Remember 2 years ago in Tennessee, they went down there. They kind of went little 5-man defensive line. They wanted to get Henry out of the game early. And, it worked that day. They were able to slow down Henry. They were able to put up a ton of points, basically put Tennessee in the point at the point of the game where they just had to chase the entire time. Like, what exactly do you do here? Because it can't be just a question that, Deion Jones is going to come in here and save the day. You got to look at it and think of it as whatever we're doing, it's not working. We got to try something different.
Yeah, I think one of the things, too, that the Browns do is Clowney and Garrett line up pretty wide in their sets, and they're always looking to rush the passer. And I think in this one, you just basically say, hey, secondary, they're not great in the receiving core. You guys got to be able to lock it down, because we're not going to be actively trying to rush the passer. We've got to start stopping the run with our front four. So I think you do that. You bring those guys in a little bit tighter, and it allows, just commit more to the run. Maybe like you talk about having a 5-man line, that will help as well, because it's not something that the Browns do on a regular basis. So providing something different for them to, hey, we're going to overcommit to this. I mean, you're not scared of Bailey Zappe or Zapp or whatever, however his last name's pronounced, throwing the ball on you.
Josh Myers doesn't kill me. Yeah.
Jacoby Myers he's a solid slot receiver. Devontae Parker is a solid wide receiver. Hunter Henry's a solid, tight end, but like, he's getting the ball from Bailey Zappe, or, that's the difference, right?
It's even funny saying his name, bro.
Right. I mean, he threw like 63 touchdowns in college football last year for Western Kentucky, but that's for Western Kentucky against a bunch of, future delivery truck drivers. So like, he's not the world breaker type dude. He doesn't have a very good arm at all. So like, I think this is a game where, like, from the Browns perspective, like they're always trying to stop the pass first and then the run second. And I think in this one, you can go, hey, we're going to stop the run first and trust our secondary that we paid big time money to be able to make some plays in secondary, in man to man, or just not having to overcommit to the pass.
Yeah, I think they got it. Whatever they're doing isn't working. I think you brought up a brilliant point about when you watch those guys, Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett are almost out in wide nines. They're just wide out there trying to rush the passer, but it's so much room inside to maneuver. And you got defensive tackles that are getting double teamed, and the linebackers. It's just, I was asking myself, is there a 6-man box? Do they have an 8-man box anytime in Joe Woods' defense? Because it seems like all they got is nickel, big nickel, little nickel, nickel 3-3-5. Like, I'm just like, do you have anything where you could put like some guys to stop the run? Because it just automatically looks like they're just so involved in trying to stop the run and stop the pass. Sometimes the run just, it looks like they have no answer for it.
No, I mean, they essentially don't have the manpower to do how they want to do it up front. So I think it's they need to do something different schematically to help those guys up front, which, maybe putting more in the box, maybe putting more on the line of scrimmage to confuse the looks. Maybe, they're obviously an even front defense. Maybe start playing some odd front to kind of confuse the offensive line in a sense. So, do a few different things with your fronts there to confuse them up.
Plus, you start maybe bringing Myles in and Jadeveon in a little closer with their shade. You open up maybe stunts, twists, possibilities. Look, at this point, if you're Joe Woods, we're to the point now where guys are losing jobs in the NFL. Joe Woods ain't no idiot. He's been around this league for a long, long time. he's got to understand, well, let's see. I had a top 5 defense last year. We're about 30 now. You ain't going to go find 11 new guys in October, but you can maybe have somebody else call the defensive plays. So it'll be interesting to see. Browns certainly got a lot of work on the defensive side of the ball. John Kosko from PFF comes in every week. We sit down. We have some laughs. We have more laughs when we win. No, certainly when we lose. But we do appreciate John contributing his time over here. Make sure you follow all John's work at John Kosko 3. Garrett Bush, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 11 to 1. Going to be a big week over there. A lot of topics for the crew over there. Cleveland Sports Show, the Barbershop post-game coverage, Browns, Guardians, Buckeyes. Make sure you're checking everything out. Make sure you're following Garrett at GBush91, myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, the show at Locked On Browns, follow back account. Appreciate everybody that makes Locked On Browns their first listen, whether it is on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, notifications on, and check out the Roku app, Locked On Cleveland Sports. You have your choice of all 4 shows here under the Tegna Locked On lens to basically feast for you every single day. Tough week for the Browns. Tough week ahead as the Patriots come into Cleveland. We'll cover it all for you. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.